Hello everyone, my name is Dakoba and welcome back to Satisfactory. Today we are finally getting into coal power and I am so excited. Coal power represents our bridge from the early game into the mid game and it's going to free us from our biomass burners. Up to this point we've been sort of tethered to our base because we have to keep coming back to keep these biomass burners refueled and keep our factory running, but once we get coal up and running and all of our power automated, the entire world opens up for us. There are so many different projects we can work on, so many different things we can explore, and I can't wait to take a look at those. Now today we're going to start off by jumping straight into a cinematic build of our basic coal power plant, but stick around afterwards and we'll go through the design and the principles of how it works and take a look at all of the different possibilities this opens up for us. Let's get into it. Alright, and that is a coal power plant all complete. Let's go through it. First off, we've got two miners sitting on top of normal coal nodes. Each of those is a Mark 1 miner, and we're not overclocking them at this time, we will later. But right now, each of those miners is pulling 60 coal per minute. That gives us 120 in total. Now, each of these coal generators uses 15 per minute. 15 times 8 is 120, so we're being perfectly efficient in terms of our coal consumption. Now each generator also requires 45 units of water per minute, so across all 8 that comes to 360. Now each water extractor has the capacity to provide 120, so you would expect to see 3 water extractors for 8 generators. You'll notice we have 4 here. Most designs do use 3 water extractors for 8 generators, and when we redo this build, that may be something we choose to do. However, I'm actually a really big fan of using 1 water extractor per 2 generators for a couple of reasons. The first of those is that it's more efficient. When we undertune the water extractor to 75%, It'll produce exactly 90 units of water a minute, which is exactly the amount required for 2 coal generators. Now, one water extractor is also the exact same width as 2 coal generators. So we have this sort of closed system here where we could separate out these pipes and have each water extractor provide for just 2 generators, and that would be perfectly efficient. It also means that we could take this system and scale it as many times as we want. If we do decide to overclock our miners and double our coal production, we can simply double the system out, and we know that it's going to work perfectly efficiently. Now, ultimately, 3 water extractors versus 4 doesn't make that big of a difference. It's mostly an aesthetic choice. However, it does reduce the power usage of the water extractors by about 15% to run 4 of them at 75% capacity instead of 3 of them at 100% capacity. So I think that comes out to an extra 16 or so megawatts of power that we can use elsewhere in our factory if we choose to. Now, in terms of the layout of the factory, you can see that we're using an elevated layer for our generators and providing our logistics from underneath. This is an aesthetic choice. I like the way the pipes and conveyor lifts look coming up to feed the generators. I think it's much cleaner, and it allows us to hide our splitters, which I think also goes a long way towards making the entire build look nice. Furthermore, once we do some work in the Awesome Shop and have walkways, we'll be able to set up a walkway through this area that allows us to have these, functional lifts and pipelines on the left and the water extractors on the right, and creates a really nice walking area that allows us to explore our factory in a more intimate way. Now, in terms of location, this is a common place to build coal power plants because there are some coal nodes just up on the beach there. There are 4 normal nodes in total, and there's a large pool of water here to accommodate extractors. This is ultimately going to be a temporary build. I actually have a build in mind for a much larger coal power plant in this location, and I can't wait to do that at a later time, but we needed to get something up and running, and this was the best place for us in the grassy plains. That's one of the challenges of starting in the plains, is that the transition into mid-game is quite a bit harder than anywhere else on the map. The other 3 starting locations all have both coal and water right nearby, whereas over on the plains close to our base, there are only a couple of small pools of water, and they're quite distant from coal, so you end up running several hundred meters of conveyor belts in order to get your first coal plant up and running. Rather than doing that, I like the aesthetic choice of running just a line of foundations over onto the beach. It's still not my favorite, but it is temporary. We are going to tear this down and build something much nicer in its place once we get a little bit more established. And this location is a fantastic one for coal power in general. Alright, if we open up our power grid, you can see that we're currently using about 80 megawatts of power, but our max consumption is closer to 250. This build actually took several hours to put together. Those time lapses take quite a while to film, and that's allowed all of our production lines back at our main factory to overflow and to fill up their storage containers and just sort of sit there at maximum capacity, which means they're not running, they're not using any power. But what we want to be concerned with is this maximum consumption, because at some point we will introduce awesome sinks and get those factories running again full time, and anything excess they produce will simply be sunk to give us some points towards unlocking those buildables. So that's the number that we want to watch for and make sure it stays below our 600 megawatts. So whenever we build a new factory, we're going to do some rough estimations, make sure that we're not going to exceed that. And if we do, then maybe we'll come back and expand our power plant or work on another one in a different place. That's one of the things that's so nice about having this up and running, is that we can now go anywhere we want. We can cross over into the northern half of the map and set up another coal power plant just like this at some of the coal nodes up there. It will allow us to expand our power infrastructure without having to worry about being too far from our main base. Speaking of, let's pop back on over to the main base and see what options we have for our next build. Alright, and we are back here at our hub, and you can see the sun rising, beckoning in a new day, which is what this feels like for us. We have so many opportunities available to us. Let's pop on over to our hub and see what we have in terms of tiers that we can pursue. We'll also take a peek at the MAM and see what research is available for us to seek out. Now in the hub, we do have a couple of things still in tier 2 to finish up. We haven't unlocked the awesome sink, and that is certainly something that is worth exploring. In fact, I think we'll go ahead and pick up the resources and send these milestones off today. We'll also get jump pads, and it may be worth revisiting our starter factory and setting up some of those pathways using those jump pads to get around a little more easily. In Tier 3, we have improved melee combat, which is something we can unlock straight away. We probably will. That's going to give us the Xenobasher, and the Xenobasher is where I think I'm going to turn Creature AI back on. I turned it off to this point because I really don't like fighting with the Xenozapper. I find it just a very clunky form of combat, but once we get the Xenobasher unlocked, then it becomes much more satisfying, much more engaging to take on that part of the game, and I think that's something we're going to be enjoying from this point forward. Now, both steel production and vehicular transport will require modular frames, so that is something we will want to set up a factory for at some point. That is actually a tier 2 recipe that comes from part assembly, but there's not really any uses for it in tier 2, so we haven't really had a reason to build that factory. But that's something we'll want to be doing soon, so we can explore the use of vehicles and sort of start advancing again through the game by getting into steel production. Now, everything in tier 4 actually requires steel, so we can't really move into that tier until we get through the rest of tier 3. And so I think that gives us a pretty good roadmap for what we need to do next there. In addition to our hub, we also have the MAM that can open up some pathways for us. We have the opportunity to go exploring and find some more hard drives. Now that we've opened up a few more tiers, there are a bunch of new alternate recipes we can find, so it may be worth exploring and seeking out some of those hard drives so we can unlock those. And there's also a great deal that we can unlock in our various trees. We could get our rebar gun, or our first ranged weapon under alien organisms. Under Caterium, we have our zipline, which is going to allow us to move around between factories much more quickly, and smart splitters, which will allow us to be much more efficient in our storage and ultimately set up a smart storage system that will allow us to bring all of these sort of different component items from different parts of our factory into one place so that we have easy access to this. So that's an area where we're going to be wanting to build a factory soon. All right, lastly, we have our quartz tree, and in particular, I want to look at the silica line on the right-hand side. Silica is one of those things that I always invest in early because it is worth a ton of points in the awesome shop. It's one of the best items to mass produce for the purpose of syncing. We're also going to need a ton of it for buildables later on, and by syncing a bunch of it, we'll get many of those buildables sooner rather than later. So that's definitely something we're going to be wanting to work on soon. Now, silica also contains the path to the blade runners, which are going to allow us to move around a lot more quickly, and so that's something we're going to want to seek out a silica vein very soon and get that, as well as the expanded inventory that comes along with that. All right, and I've gone around and gathered up all the resources we need to send off our next few milestones. So let's get those filled in. We're going to use our handy trick again where we don't send that off just yet. We're going to go ahead and make sure we get everything all filled up so we can send them all off together. And there we go. All right, and with those milestones away, I think that's going to do it for today. I think our next episode, we're going to focus on building that modular frame factory so that we can start advancing through the tiers, and we're also going to take a look at the awesome shop and setting up a quick awesome sync program using silica. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me for a few minutes today. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it's made your day just a little bit better. Leave a like if it has, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. My name is Bitnikoba, and as always, I hope you have an efficient day. I'll see you soon.